So, Michael, where did you grow up?
So I was born in Seattle, Washington, and then ended growing up in Pensacola, Florida, which is in the Panhandle. It's an hour drive from Mobile, Alabama. I'm a Southern boy, and then I went to school at the University of Florida after that, and then now I'm in Chicago. So it's been quite a journey.
See, another similarity. I grew up on Long Island, New York, an hour away from New York City. I
And
mean,
you just ended up in New York.
and
Perfect.
I just ended up in New York. It's the same story. You grew up on the West, born on the West Coast, grew up on the East Coast. I grew up east of the city and ended up living in the city. So I would say yet another similarity. Yeah, I grew up Long Island, New York, a town called Kings Park, known for two things, a mental institution, a state-run facility that was self-sufficient, that's now closed. No, I never went there. And also at one point it was in the Guinness Book of World Records for most bars per capita. Which that I never went to a bar there until long after they did no longer have that special distinction. How did you start with the clarinet? How did you start with music? What made the clarinet happen for you?
So I started playing piano a little late. I started at 8, and then
fossilization.
Yeah. It was already over before it began. And then it was really over when I started clarinet at 12. So I was, you start music usually in 6th grade in Florida, the instrumental music. So it's not like the northern states where you start in 4th grade. So I started actually playing bass guitar in my school band because my band director used a bass guitar, to beef up the sound and some band stuff. And then, because usually there would be like a jazzer kid or something like that want to play. So it was fine, except I was not a jazzer kid. I just did it because that was the instrument I had. And then I also learned how to play clarinet on the side. Picking up instruments is fast when you're a kid, at least making the noises and learning the different notes. So I want to be in the top band in middle school. So he's like, well, you can't play bass guitar in the top band, so play clarinet. So of course I want to be in the top band with my friends, and that's kind of clarinet and where it started. How did you start playing clarinet, David?
Well, my parents felt that each kid's going to play an instrument that had to be in the band. And I was the youngest of 3. My oldest brother had played trumpet all through, high school. And then I came along, and it was my turn to pick an instrument. I wanted to play the trumpet because I thought it was cool. My older brother had played it. My father said, no, your older brother played it, so you should pick something different. And I don't know. And he was in this whole phase where he was listening to Benny Goodman and Artie Shaw albums and things like that. And he says, hey, how about the clarinet? And what did I know? I was in the 3rd grade or something like that. We were at an antique car flea market, a show in, I believe it was Carlisle, Pennsylvania, or Macungie, Pennsylvania. I forget which one. And there was a guy that had instruments there. I think he was a music teacher, but he's also a car enthusiast. And for some reason, he was selling instruments at the show. I'm not going to get any deeper than know where and why and how, but it wasn't my business. But my father brought back a clarinet, and I thought it was neat with all the little buttons and stuff. And I guess the guy had said it needed a little work because my older brother and father ended up ordering a set of pads and corks. And I guess my older brother had a friend that played clarinet. I don't know. They ended up overhauling my clarinet. I come from a family of I guess people that are very mechanically inclined. My father, his whole life had to do with old cars and fixing cars, and the family business was actually a fuel pump and water pump repair business for antique cars. And each of the 3 sons did a lot of work along those lines. That's how I earned money to buy my first serious clarinet was, a summer job or a year of fixing fuel pumps. So, whatever. I got the clarinet. I didn't know anything better, and it was fine. I got the instrument, and I didn't particularly like the teacher that I had in the summer program. I don't know what it was. It was something that wasn't quite right. I was maybe shy. I was uncomfortable, and I didn't get serious until high school, really.
Yeah.
Good band teacher, a special band teacher that was inspirational. And she ended up being a private lesson teacher of mine for a while. And then, one thing led to the next, like a lot of this does. What made you follow the path that you did? I mean, you were in music, in doing musical things in high school, but then you went to school, but you studied, your undergrad at first was for business, right?
So at University of Florida, there's this business program, or there's this, in the music school, there's a program called Combination with an Outside Field. So you can get a bachelor's in music and then take course credit towards other disciplines. And one of the things you could do if you qualify, if you got into business school, was do this master's in management program. And that's something I did. So during my 4 years of undergrad, I did, in the last year and a half, I started taking master's courses in business. And then in my 5th year in Florida, I just did a master's in business before I decided to do music classes. So for me, it's really uncertain kind of what you can be as a musician. It just kind of, at that time, it really scared me. So I wanted something that could be flexible and something that could be applicable. Because before I started business school, I actually did an internship with Vandoren as a marketing intern in Chicago.
I remember meeting you during that, sure.
Yeah, so it was kind of cool because it was something at the time. I was like, the business side of things was something I was interested in, and then I had gotten to know the brand manager at the time, Andy Blanco, and through the Vandoren Clarinet Ensemble festivals that my professor would host or conduct and put together. So it was, yeah, so it kind of worked out in a way where it was like I decided to do a business degree. I had a business internship. And then I was still playing clarinet. You can do the two things together, and it's not like it wasn't too hard. I mean, it's a little hard because you kind of, when I was in business school, it's like, oh shoot, do I like practice? Like, cause you just like, do I go for the A or do I practice? Like, and it's kind of, it's difficult because for me at the time, I was trying to do two things, and I was doing grad school auditions while I was finishing a master's degree. So I decided I wanted to do a master's degree in music, and you can do both by prioritizing sometimes in like two intensive things like a music performance degree and then a master's in business. You kind of have to there's always trade-offs, and that was kind of what I did. I want to get into school.
That's a key thing for the future, because you and I do more than just one thing. I think a lot of musicians or people that have done a lot with music are called or are drawn to do more than just one thing. Maybe it's necessity for survival, maybe it's curiosity, maybe it's doubt, maybe whatever it is, where I think we all do a lot. And I can only imagine, I mean, look, my schooling was just music. I didn't have other degrees, other things in my life happening, but it was not not clearly split up to try to master, get different disciplines at the same time. I mean, when I was in my undergrad, what I should say is when I was finishing up high school, I was teaching already a little bit young kids, in the neighborhood or whatever, just clarinet lessons and all, and I continued on with that my first at least 2 years when I was in music school, because first of all, it was only an hour away. Could take the Long Island Railroad home and teach on the weekend, and so I would do this teaching, I'd come back, whatever, and because I was kind of, it was my money, pocket money. I mean, I had scholarships, so I mean, school was, but I mean, it's a work ethic. I don't know. I was always trying to do other things, and I did that for probably 2 years, and then it was like, school became, I guess, more. It was just more work for me. I needed to phase that out, and I just kind of purely did that thing, and the practice all day, classes in the middle, practice at night. Maybe there was a party or two. I can't really remember.
But
But it, but that's a change. And, I went and I later studied in France, and it was the same thing when I was in France. First year was lessons, but I was doing a little teaching. And then my second and third year, I was kind of the director of a cultural program, organizing concerts and art exhibits and doing publicity for that and all this. So again, it was something else happening. It was never just one thing. Maybe that's a fault. Maybe that's a good thing. It is what it is. I didn't see it as a problem at the time. Yes, I guess you always wish you could have practiced more, but that's, water under the bridge. But, your whole decision to focus and get a master's in performance and stuff, all along these studies, like, was your family on board with this? Did you have support? Was it challenging? Like, how did you manage?
I think my parents were always pretty cool. I mean, that's something I'm really thankful for. I know a lot of people, parents aren't cool about, aren't a lot of my friends, some parents aren't cool about them studying music. And my parents were always pretty supportive. I think mostly because I worked a lot at it, especially at a young age. I would do all these things. I would try, I was trying to play in master classes that I could in high school and stuff like that. And, going out to there's a big like honor band culture in the South where you go and like meet other students from other schools and play under the college band director. That was always like something that was fun because you could go and play music that's different than your high school band programs level of repertoire usually. So, so I think I'm not sure they were surprised, but I think, when I told them I made the decision to pursue it, I think they always knew kind of what was going to go into it. They've always just been supportive of me, and they've always just wanted me to do the best that I can. That's one of the things that can make like a musician's decision to pursue music really hard, is if they do or don't have the support of the family. So I'm really thankful that that wasn't something I have had to worry about. Yeah, thanks to them. So you decided to go to France. Could you tell me more about that? How has that kind of shaped you, like, musically? Was that like a lot different than going to Juilliard? You're going from the American conservatory setting to,
It was a big shock to the system for me because, yes, I played clarinet all the time and I played in all the ensembles I could in high school, but getting to Juilliard, there were kids that did all these pre-college programs and things like that, and they were way prepared, and kids with perfect pitch, kids with a knowledge of things that I had no idea. So I felt pretty behind. I felt lucky to get the opportunity, but I felt behind. And the year I got in, I think there were 3 undergrads and a master's student that got in. Master's or doctorate, I forget, but so long ago. But while I was there, I ended up getting turned on to a teacher named David Weber. And I was studying with Stanley Drucker. And I was supposed to play a recital at the end of my first summer. And my accompanist in high school, her daughter is a clarinetist in New York, Merrill Apt Greenfield. She's a wonderful person, and her mother, Marilyn, my pianist, encouraged me because Merrill had studied with David Weber, and they saw, I guess, that I was serious and I really wanted to improve and continue to get better. And they said, well, you should go take a lesson with him. So I was a little uncomfortable, but Merrill just said, you won't regret it. And I've told her, I see her from time to time. I don't always say this, but like, she's really responsible. That I can still picture the phone call I had with her, where it was, where I was, and how she encouraged me to do that. And that really kind of changed my life, because I found a teacher, a mentor, a friend that I had for the rest of his life. I met him, I guess he had just turned 80, and I knew him for about 12 years. Became very, very, very close. And it wasn't that I wasn't learning anywhere else. It was another way, we've all had teachers say the same stuff to us, but one teacher says it maybe with a different turn of phrase and it sinks in more. Plus, I mean, I went from seeing a teacher once a week for an hour, then I was go to lessons with Mr. Weber, and it'd be like, you know, I'd be there for 3 hours.
Sure,
I mean, he was retired at that point. He didn't have a lot of students, and I think he just missed teaching. And he had a kid, you know, he taught at Juilliard and had a lot of, I mean, amazing students that went on to incredible things. So I think, you know, to have another serious student trying to get for it, you know, he was excited to do it anyway. All that to say, so I was sitting with him at the same time as Juilliard, and he encouraged me, I guess, but during my junior year, that summer I should do what a bunch of the his other students had done probably 10 years before me, go study with Jacques Lancelot in a stage, you know, a camp. And Lancelot at that point was no longer teaching at the famous Nice Academy, but he was teaching in a little town called La Canorde, the south of France, middle south of France. And I should go, and I ended up, you know, you didn't audition for it. You just, you know, filled out paperwork, you went. You know, if they had enough spaces, you got in. I mean, I think I made that whole festival international. I think I was the only foreigner, the only non-French person there. At that point, I had 1 year of French at Juilliard. I had a great teacher, but I was not a great student. So you know, I did this thing. It was my first time leaving the country, first time on an airplane. I mean, on a commercial airplane. I flew foreign country all by myself, somehow managed to get all the trains and get my way to this tiny little town. And all the other students, they were all different ages, some that went into music, some that didn't. But I just liked how they all played the clarinet. And I mean, it was one of these camps where we were all playing the clarinet probably for 8 or 9 hours a day. I had a lesson with a master every other day, and you know, repertoire, and then we'd have a clarinet ensemble thing where he would coach us through things, talking about music and stuff. And I mean, I didn't understand all of it, but I started to. But I'll tell you, by the end of that 1 month, you know, we'd go out to the cafe every night, and we'd all have, you know, beer and talk, or hang out, or hot chocolate. Excuse me, we'd all have hot chocolate and talk. And I got better at French, but like I said, I kind of liked what I was hearing, what I was seeing, the mentality, and it showed me I still had very much a lot to learn, and went back to school. I was a great French student at that point for my senior year of Juilliard, and met other, you know, francophones or francophiles at the time. Then one of them told me about this grant, the Harriet Hale Woolley Scholarship, that, oh, we're talking, oh, you should apply and all this. And I did the whole thing, the application, and I got it, you know, and that ended up being the next 3 years of my life. So that became my graduate school. And there so I had studied with Lancelot, and then I got there and I spent a year studying with Michel Arignon at Conservatory in the 12th. And he was also the teacher at the Paris Conservatory at the time. And then I met Philippe Couper. He actually called me the day after I auditioned for the Paris Opera and didn't get it, saying, oh, you know, I enjoyed very much your playing. He was very kind. He invited me to his clarinet day. And
oh, wow.
We, you know, to hang out, whatever. So the next thing you know, I'm realizing, wow, this is great. And I ended up not switching. I finished I got my one prize with Arignon, and then I did 2 years at the Conservatory of Versailles with Philippe Couper. And again, we became very good friends, and he gave me very much what I needed. I mean, he gave me a strong kick in the rear end, and he was, I mean, if people don't know who he is, I mean, he's the guy that at the time won all the competitions, amazing recordings, plays in Paris Opera. I mean, he was just amazing for me at the time. And he was a guy that was in the middle of doing it, and pushed, and really pushed. He had amazing years, pushed me, made me look at things differently than I had been, and really, I mean, I think that's another large part of where I am today is because of that. Then you asked me what's different about all that for me to tell you what's different about things over there. I think the focus was just different. I mean, yeah, there was orchestra. I was playing in an orchestra while I was a student there. I actually played a concerto with them, whatever. But I mean, he pushed me in repertoire and etudes, and transposition and all these things, you know, just, it was a lot of work. And the exam, to give you an example of the workload, the exams there, you'd get the repertoire a month before the exam. And it was probably about 40 minutes of music, 30, 40 minutes of music that you'd have to play from memory at the exam. The exam was open to the public, so anybody could go and listen. And it was a jury of people that probably never heard you before. You know, your teacher wasn't grading. In fact, at the audition, at the prize, the exams, Philippe was turning pages for the pianist. And he told me, you know, how it would work. The jury would ask him, you know, we think this, what do you think? And Philippe, unless there was something really, like someone really bombed, or he really thought something was not right, he just said, I went with what the jury went with, you know. And so did, you know, two things like that, where I played second, third movement of Spore 1, and a new piece by Paul Methano called Involutive. And then the next year was Sankan Sonatina and the Prokofiev flute or violin sonata on clarinet.
Okay.
So those were the things, you know, so that was, but I mean, we did a lot of competitions. It pushed us more solo rep. When I remember my graduation recital at Juilliard, I was so uncomfortable in front of the piano, standing there.
Sure.
And I shouldn't have been, because we did lots of different things, but like, I don't know, I just didn't do it enough. So I wanted, my goal of this thing in France is I never wanted to be uncomfortable in front of a piano again. And this place where I was living had concerts, you know, basically every 2 weeks. Mostly kind of like potluck, you'd play whatever. I mean, I played a piece, a movement of something, or a whole piece, or a solo piece, or something with piano, whatever it was. I just performed a lot.
Wow.
You know, I just wanted to get more experience, and I didn't want to be nervous or uncomfortable playing anymore like that. You know,
Sure.
Of course, you can't cure that stuff, but just experience was something I felt like I really, really needed. So it was, I would say the focus was more on chamber music, solo stuff. But like I said, I did play in an orchestra. I did take auditions, and they listen to excerpts at auditions there too. And I mean, it just
So
was.
could you, kind of for everyone like listening, could you tell us how different European audition is compared to an American audition?
Well,
Just
I mean,
like just like a brief kind of like, what might you see on the list?
Well, so I'm thinking of a couple of the auditions. Like, so the first round of an audition over there, you'd always, I mean, what I can remember, you'd play with piano, or it'd be solo repertoire. I mean, I remember one audition, I played the Mozart exposition with piano, and you'd get a rehearsal the day before, and you'd go in and you'd play with piano. So like you're walking in there playing an opening exposition with piano. They sort of hear, if you can listen, tuning, all this sort of stuff. It's not, you know, out of context. There was one audition I remember. This was amazing. There was one audition where the first round was the second piece of the Stravinsky 3 pieces. So it was, I mean, it was hilarious. It was a cattle call. Like, there must have been 60 or 70 people there. And you just kind of walked in, they're like, okay, they're starting with that. I mean, that shows everything right there. If you can walk in and be composed enough to do that well, you obviously have some nerve.
Sure, yeah.
All that to say, the first round of this audition was probably done by lunchtime. And there was about 50 people on the train going back to Paris.